coffee stain on my shirt collar bothered me more than it should have. I dabbed at it with a damp paper towel, checking my watch for the third time in 5 minutes. 7:42. The morning sun glinted off the Mississippi River outside my apartment window, casting long golden streaks across my living room floor. I had exactly 18 minutes to finish this proposal before my 8:30 video call. My phone buzzed. Another text from my boss. Need that data before the Henderson meeting. You on track? I typed a quick yes and tossed the phone aside, returning to my laptop. The Henderson account was worth potentially millions to our firm, and I wasn't about to be the one who fumbled it. Outside, a barge horn sounded, low and mournful against the backdrop of early morning street. Lewis traffic. The TV murmured in the background. Some local morning show. I kept on for noise more than information. I reached for my coffee mug, finding it empty. Again, third cup and the day had barely started. That's when the first alert cut through. The harsh, grating tone made me flinch, that distinctive emergency broadcast sound that always seemed to be just testing. My TV screen flashed to a blue background with white text. Emergency alert. Water testing stations report unusual readings along Mississippi River. Authorities investigating. No action required at this time. The message scrolled across my screen twice before the morning show resumed. The hosts now discussing the alert with practiced concern that didn't quite reach their eyes. Environmental officials have not specified the nature of these unusual readings, the woman said, making air quotes. But they've assured us there's no cause for immediate concern. I snorted. Probably another chemical spill from one of the industrial plants upriver. It happened every few years, a brief panic. Some cleanup, a slap on the corporate wrist. Then business as usual. I had more pressing concerns. Like the Henderson proposal that was still missing 3 key data visualizations. My phone buzzed again. This time with a news notification repeating the alert. I swiped it away without reading the full message. My sister, Emily, who lived downriver in Cape Girardeau, would probably call soon. She panicked over every environmental warning, no matter how minor. I turned back to my laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. The next 40 minutes disappeared into a blur of spreadsheets and presentation slides. When I finally came up for air, I realized I'd missed my sister's call after all. A voicemail notification blinked on my screen. Hey, it's Em. Did you see that river alert? Probably nothing. But Dad's fishing trip was canceled. Call me when you can. I made a mental note to call her after the Henderson meeting and pour another cup of coffee. As I walked back to my desk, something caught my eye outside the window. On a normal day, I could see at least a dozen boats on this stretch of the river, tour boats, fishing skiffs, barges. Today, I counted only 3, all heading northbound. No southbound traffic. Odd, but not alarming. Maybe there was scheduled maintenance at one of the locks. My laptop chimed with a meeting reminder. 2 minutes until the Henderson call. I straightened my shirt, coffee stain now mostly hidden, ran a hand through my hair, and clicked the video link. The meeting went well enough. Despite Henderson himself asking about that river situation halfway through, I assured him it was routine, probably nothing serious, and steered the conversation back to quarterly projections. By the time we wrapped up, it was nearly 10 a.m., and I desperately needed to stretch my legs. I decided on a quick walk to the coffee shop around the corner. As I locked my apartment door, I noticed my neighbor, Mrs. Grantham, struggling with several gallon jugs of water. Let me help you with those, I offered, taking 2 jugs from her arms. Thank you, dear, she said, her voice slightly breathless. Can't be too careful with the water these days. I raised an eyebrow. Because of that alert this morning, I'm sure it's nothing. Better safe than sorry, she replied, her expression unusually solemn. My son works for the city water department, so they've never seen readings like these. Something in her tone made me pause. Readings like what? Exactly. He wouldn't say over the phone. She lowered her voice. Just told me to stock up on bottled water and stay away from the river. I helped her carry the water inside, trying to ignore the slight unease her words had triggered. As I continued toward the coffee shop, I noticed more people than usual carrying water bottles and groceries. A line had formed outside the convenience store on the corner. The coffee shop was busier than normal for a Tuesday morning. The TV behind the counter was tuned to a news channel, the volume too low to hear over the hum of conversation. But the headline scrolling across the bottom of the screen caught my attention. Mississippi River tests continue. Authorities urge calm. Crazy, right? Said the barista as she handed me my cold brew. My roommate's already talking about going to her parents' place in Chicago. Seems like an overreaction, I replied, though I found myself hesitating before taking a sip of my coffee. They use river water for the coffee here. She laughed. No, city water, though I guess it all comes from the same place eventually. I nodded, not entirely reassured, and headed back outside. The sky had clouded over, the earlier sunshine replaced by a flat, gray light that made everything look slightly washed out. As I walked back to my apartment, I realized what had been bothering me all morning. The birds. There were no birds. The riverfront park was usually filled with gulls, pigeons, and geese, their noise a constant backdrop. Today, nothing. The silence was noticeable now that I was paying attention, an absence where there should have been sound. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the news. More reports about the river, but still frustratingly vague. Anomalous readings, ongoing investigation, no immediate threat to public health. I was about to put my phone away when it buzzed in my hand. Another emergency alert. This one sent directly to phones. Emergency alert. Updated guidance regarding Mississippi River. As a precautionary measure, avoid direct contact with river water until further notice. Tap water remains safe for all uses. I stared at the message, then at the river in the distance. The water looked the same as it always did, muddy brown, flowing steadily southward. Nothing visibly wrong, but no boats now, no birds, and a strange metallic taste in my mouth that I told myself was just the coffee. When I returned to my apartment, I found myself filling a pot with tap water before I could think too hard about why. Just in case. I told myself, just being practical, nothing to do with Mrs. Grantham's worried face or the empty sky above the river. My phone rang, Emily again. This time, I answered. Have you seen the new alert? She asked without preamble. Just now, I said, watching the pot of water on my counter. I'm sure it's nothing serious. Dad says they've closed the boat ramps. All of them. I moved to the window, scanning the river again. Still no southbound traffic. Probably just being cautious until they figure out what's going on. Maybe, she said, not sounding convinced. Just keep an eye on it. Okay. And call me if you hear anything else. After we hung up, I turned the TV back on, flipping to the local news. More vague statements, more reassurances. I tried to go back to work, but found myself checking the river every few minutes, as if expecting to see something different, something that would explain the growing knot of unease in my stomach. It's nothing, I told myself firmly. Just another river pollution scare. It'll be resolved by tomorrow, and everyone will forget about it by next week. I almost believed it. I slept poorly that night. My dreams were filled with muddy water rising around my ankles, silent birds watching from distant trees. When my alarm blared at 6:30 a.m., I was already awake, staring at the ceiling. The light filtering through my blinds had a strange quality to it, too yellow, almost sulfuric. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, not the gentle vibration of a text or email, but the harsh, insistent pulse of an emergency alert. My stomach tightened as I reached for it. Emergency alert. The Mississippi River is now highly radioactive. Avoid all contact. Cause under investigation. Further instructions pending. I read it twice, then a third time. Radioactive? That couldn't be right. Nuclear plants dotted the river. Yes, but there would have been news of a meltdown. Evacuation orders. Something more than this cryptic message. The TV remote felt unusually heavy in my hand as I switched on the morning news. The anchors looked tense, their usual banter replaced by clipped sentences and tight smiles. Confirms that radiation levels in the Mississippi River have exceeded safety thresholds. Officials have not yet identified the source of the contamination. The public is advised to avoid all contact with river water until further notice. A map appeared on screen, highlighting the affected area, a long stretch of the river from southern Minnesota down to Louisiana, the entirety of the Mississippi's main channel. I reached for my phone and opened a browser, searching for more information. Twitter was exploding with theories, ranging from plausible, unreported accident at a nuclear facility to absurd government weapons test. Alien technology. Official sources remained frustratingly vague. Investigating. Monitoring. Avoid contact. My coffee maker gurgled in the kitchen. I stared at it, suddenly uncertain. The water. Was tap water safe? The alert yesterday had said yes. But this was new information. My gaze drifted to the pot of water I'd collected last night, still sitting on the counter. Not nearly enough if this was a long-term problem. My phone rang. Emily. Again. Are you seeing this? Her voice was tight, with barely controlled panic. Just saw it, I replied, moving to the window. In the morning light, the river looked darker somehow, though I told myself it was just the gloomy weather. What's going on down there? It's chaos. Stores are already out of water. Dad says people are filling bathtubs, coolers, anything they can find. A pause. They've shut off the municipal water in Cape. That got my attention. Already? But the alert just went out. No, it didn't. Something in her voice made my skin prickle. The first radiation alert went out here last night, around 11 p.m. You didn't get that one. I checked my phone's alert history. Nothing between yesterday's avoid contact message and this morning's highly radioactive warning. No, I said slowly. Nothing last night. There was a long silence on the line. What does that mean? I finally asked. I don't know. Her voice had dropped to almost a whisper, but it's moving upriver. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Whatever this was, it had started downstream and was working its way north against the current. That didn't make sense. Unless. I need to go, I said abruptly. I'll call you back. I hung up before she could respond and moved to the large windows overlooking the river. From my apartment on the 15th floor, I had a commanding view of the Mississippi as it curved past downtown street. Lewis. On a normal day, I could see for miles. Today, a faint haze hung over the water, distorting the far banks. But what caught my eye were the shapes moving along the riverfront. Yellow hazmat suits, dozens of them, setting up equipment along the bank. Military vehicles parked at access points. In the distance, what looked like sampling boats moved slowly through the water, their crews also in full protective gear. This was no minor incident. This was a full-scale environmental emergency. My phone rang again, my boss this time. Office is closed today, he said without preamble. Everyone's working remotely until further notice. Because of the river situation, he laughed. A harsh sound without humor. The river situation. Yeah, my brother-in-law works for FEMA. Says they've been mobilizing since yesterday afternoon, but they're keeping it quiet to avoid panic. What's actually happening? I asked, watching another military truck pull up to the riverfront below. Is it radiation? From where? That's the thing, they don't know. Or they're not saying. But whatever it is, it's not following normal dispersion patterns. His voice lowered. Listen, do you have somewhere you can go? Away from the river. I guess I could drive to my parents in Chicago. I said, though the thought of the 5-hour drive through potential evacuation traffic wasn't appealing. You think it's that serious? I think. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I think official channels aren't telling us everything. Just keep your options open. Okay, after we hung up, I stood by the window for a long time, watching the activity below. More hazmat teams, more equipment, no civilian boats at all now. The evacuation, if that's what this was, seemed to be happening piece by piece. Authorities trying to address the situation without triggering widespread panic. I turned on the tap in my kitchen, filling a glass with water. It looked normal. I brought it to my nose, inhaling. No unusual smell, but something stopped me from drinking it. That same instinct that makes you pull your hand back from a hot stove before your conscious mind registers the pain. Instead, I opened my laptop and began researching radiation poisoning, trying to separate fact from the horror stories of Chernobyl and Fukushima. The symptoms range from mild nausea, fatigue, to severe skin burns, organ failure, depending on exposure level. Water could carry radioactive particles, but typically from known sources, nuclear waste. Plant accidents. Nothing explained how an entire river system could suddenly become highly radioactive overnight. With no clear source, my research was interrupted by another emergency alert. This one a crawl at the bottom of my TV screen, which I'd left on but muted. Water shutoffs expected in selected areas of SD. Lewis County as precautionary measure. Residents advised to prepare. I unmuted the TV in time to hear a spokesperson from the Water Authority emphasize that these are precautionary measures only. Initial testing of municipal water supplies shows no contamination at this time. These temporary shutoffs will allow for more comprehensive testing of our treatment facilities. The camera cut to the reporter. And how long do you expect these shutoffs to last? The spokesperson's smile was a professional mask. We hope to have service restored within 24 to 48 hours. Again, this is precautionary. A knock at my door startled me. Mrs. Grantham stood there, her normally neat appearance disheveled, as if she'd dressed in a hurry. They're shutting off the water in an hour, she said without greeting. My son just called. Not just our building, the whole district. I nodded, processing this. The announcement said it's precautionary. She gave me a look that made me feel naive. That's what they always say. Listen, Richard's coming to get me. We're going to his place in Springfield, he says. She hesitated, then continued in a lower voice. He says it's not just radiation. There's something else they're not telling us. What do you mean? Something else, but she was already turning away. I need to finish packing. Just be careful, okay? Don't trust everything they're saying on TV. As she disappeared back into her apartment, I noticed other neighbors in the hallway, some carrying suitcases, others speaking in hushed, urgenton. The atmosphere had shifted from yesterday's mild concern to something approaching controlled fear. Back in my apartment, I filled my bathtub and every container I could find with tap water, then stood at the window again, watching more hazmat teams arrive at the riverfront. In the distance, I could see what looked like a roadblock being set up on the bridge leading to Illinois. The sun was fully up now, but it seemed dimmer than usual, as if the light had to push through something thicker than air. And though I told myself it was impossible, the river itself seemed to have taken on a faintly luminous quality, a subtle wrongness that made my eyes hurt if I looked at it too long. My phone rang again, unknown number. I answered cautiously. This is an automated emergency notification from the city of Street. "Lewis," said a mechanical voice, "your area has been designated for priority evacuation due to proximity to the Mississippi River. Please prepare for evacuation within the next 4 to 6 hours. Further instructions will follow." This is not a test. The call ended before I could respond, leaving me standing in my apartment, surrounded by containers of potentially contaminated water, watching hazmat teams move along a faintly glowing river, waiting for evacuation orders that contradicted the measured reassurances still playing on my TV. Something was very wrong here, and I was beginning to suspect that radiation was only part of the story. 4 hours after the evacuation call, I was still in my apartment. The promised further instructions never came. Instead, my phone had gone eerily silent. No alerts, no updates, nothing. Just the occasional text from Emily that took increasingly longer to deliver. Roads completely blocked south of Cape. National Guard turning people back. Dad says they're setting up quarantine zones. Is that happening there too? Her last message had come through nearly an hour ago. Water's out now. Signal getting spotty. Call if you can. I tried. The call wouldn't connect. Outside my window, the city was transforming. The orderly hazmat teams from earlier had multiplied, now joined by military personnel in what looked like NBC gear, nuclear, biological, chemical protection. They'd established a perimeter around the riverfront park, keeping a growing crowd of onlookers at bay. Beyond them, specialized vehicles I didn't recognize moved along the waterfront, deploying equipment that looked more appropriate for a science fiction movie than Downtown Street. Lewis. The water shutoff had come right on schedule. One moment, the pipes hummed with normal pressure. The next, they sputtered and went silent. I'd managed to fill every container in my apartment, pots, pitchers, even my largest mixing bowl, but it wouldn't last long. 3 days, maybe 4 if I was careful. The TV still worked, cycling between local news and national coverage. The story had gone nationwide now, but details remained frustratingly vague. Unprecedented radiation levels, cause under investigation. Residents urged to remain calm. What they weren't saying spoke volumes. No mention of how far the contamination had spread. No explanation for why it appeared to be moving upstream. No estimates on when people could return to evacuated areas. Just platitudes and increasingly hollow reassurances. Authorities maintain that the situation is under control, said a CNN anchor, her expression carefully neutral. Behind her, a split screen showed aerial footage of what I recognized as the river near Memphis. Military checkpoints on every bridge. Boats with equipment I couldn't identify moving in formation along the water. Under control? It looked like a military occupation. A knock at my door pulled me away from the window. I opened it cautiously, half expecting hazmat suits and evacuation orders. Instead, I found Marcus from 2 doors down, looking as if he hadn't slept. "Building meeting in the community room," he said, his voice rough. 10 minutes. Trying to figure out what the hell we're supposed to do since nobody's telling us anything. I nodded and followed him to the elevator. Inside, he kept his distance, as if proximity alone might be dangerous. I didn't blame him. None of us knew how this worked. If the contamination was limited to direct water contact or if it could spread through other means. The community room was packed. Nearly all 36 units represented. Mr. Patel, our building manager, stood at the front, trying to maintain order as multiple conversations competed for airspace. "We have to coordinate," he was saying, raising his hands for quiet. "The information we're getting is inconsistent, but we need to work together. Share resources. They're blocking the bridges." Called someone from the back. "My sister tried to cross to Illinois an hour ago. National Guard turned her back. Same at the 270 bridge." Added a woman I recognized from the 5th floor. They're saying it's temporary, but they've got concrete barriers set up. Mr. Patel nodded grimly. It appears we are being contained. The question is why, and what we should do in the meantime. I heard it's not just radiation. This from Mrs. Chun, who worked at Barnes Jewish Hospital. All eyes turned to her. She hesitated, then continued. We got 3 patients last night. They've been fishing downstream, near Kimswick. The radiation burns were unusual. Unusual how? I asked, feeling a chill despite the overcrowded room. She looked at me, her expression clinical, but her eyes betraying something else. Fear. Maybe. Radiation burns typically present as severe skin damage, like extreme sunburn. These are different. More like changes. Changes, someone echoed. She nodded slowly. The tissue was transforming. Not dying, changing. I've never seen anything like it. A heavy silence fell over the room. Someone whispered, Jesus Christ. That can't be right, Marcus said after a moment, voicing what many of us were thinking. Radiation doesn't work that way. I know what I saw. Mrs. Chun replied simply, and I know what the attending physician said before security removed us from the ward. He said, this isn't radiation. This is something else. The meeting deteriorated after that. Some residents argued for immediate evacuation. Others insisted on waiting for official guidance. A small faction believed the entire situation was exaggerated, a malfunction at a testing station, perhaps, or faulty equipment giving false readings. I remained silent, processing what Mrs. Chun had said. Changes, not damage. Transformation, not destruction. In my pocket, my phone vibrated. A text from Emily. The first in over an hour. Something in the water. Moving. Dad saw it. The message chilled me. I quickly typed back. What do you mean? Moving? The reply took nearly 5 minutes. Not radiation. Something alive. Videos online, but getting removed fast. Search Mississippi anomaly. I slipped out of the meeting and returned to my apartment, hands shaking slightly as I opened my laptop. A search for Mississippi anomaly returned scattered results, mostly conspiracy theory forums and social media threads. Many links led to deleted content or error messages, but one Reddit thread was still active, updating in real time. The original post had been removed, but the comments painted a disturbing picture. Brother works River Patrol in Baton Rouge. Says they found something in the water 2 weeks ago. Government took over. Classified everything. My cousin sent me a video before they took his phone. Something moving under the surface. Not a current. Not fish. Something big. They're lying about the radiation. It's cover for something else. Attached to one comment was a grainy video file. I clicked play. The footage was dark, clearly taken at night, showing a stretch of river illuminated by what looked like spotlight beams. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then a disturbance in the water, not waves or normal current patterns, but something deliberate. The water seemed to fold in on itself, creating geometries that water shouldn't make. The video abruptly cut to black. I played it again, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. It could have been anything, a boat wake, underwater debris, clever editing, but something about the movement felt wrong, purposeful, intelligent. My phone rang, startling me, an actual call, not a text, unknown number, but I answered immediately, hoping it was Emily. Hello. The connection was terrible, full of static and strange harmonics. Still there, it was Emily's voice, barely audible through the interference. Don't water coming. Emily, you're breaking up. What's happening? Transforming people, Dad. Her voice cut out completely, replaced by a high-pitched whine that made me pull the phone from my ear. When I looked at the screen, The call had ended. I tried calling back, but now all calls failed to connect. Even the Reddit thread wouldn't refresh. The internet was slowing to a crawl. I moved to the window again, drawn by commotion outside. The crowd at the perimeter had grown larger, more agitated. Military vehicles were moving in, soldiers deploying in formation. Through my binoculars, I could see they were carrying riot gear. As I watched, a new alert crawled across my TV screen. Emergency alert, citywide curfew in effect from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. Remain indoors. Compliance mandatory. It was only 2:30 p.m., but the light outside had taken on that strange quality again. Too yellow, too thick. The river seemed darker than usual, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. And though I told myself it was impossible, from 15 floors up, I could swear I saw patterns in the water that had nothing to do with natural currents. Geometric shapes, right angles, perfect circles that expanded and contracted like breathing. My phone vibrated one last time. Another emergency alert. This is not a test. Shelter in place. Do not approach the river. Do not use tap water even if service returns. Await further instructions. Below, soldiers moved into position facing the crowd. Hazmat teams retreated from the riverbank, some moving with the urgency of fear. In the distance, I heard what might have been gunshots, or maybe car backfires, and deep in my gut, a certainty was forming, a truth I didn't want to acknowledge but couldn't ignore any longer. This wasn't just an environmental disaster. This wasn't just radiation. Whatever was happening in the Mississippi River, it wasn't about contamination. It was about invasion. Night fell with unsettling speed. The sunset lasted perhaps 10 minutes, a brief, sickly orange glow quickly swallowed by darkness. By 6 p.m., an hour before the mandated curfew, the streets were already empty. The crowd that had gathered at the riverfront perimeter had dispersed, whether voluntarily or by force. I couldn't tell. The military vehicles remained, their headlights cutting sharp cones through the deepening gloom. I'd spent the afternoon packing a go bag, clothes, first aid supplies, my dwindling food, and most of my collected water. If evacuation orders finally came, I'd be ready. But as I watched the bridges being systematically blocked and military checkpoints established at major intersections, I wondered if evacuation was even an option anymore. The power flickered twice during the evening, each time plunging the city into momentary darkness before humming back to life. During one of these flickers, I noticed something unsettling. The river glowed, not the reflected city lights or moonlight, but a faint, pulsing luminescence that seemed to come from deep below the surface. Blinking, you'd miss it brief, but undeniably there. The TV still worked, though channels were limited now. Local news ran on a loop, the same cautious statements repeated by increasingly haggard-looking anchors. National news offered a broader but no more informative view, similar situations playing out in river cities from Minneapolis to New Orleans. The term containment zone had entered the lexicon, clinical and antiseptic, masking the reality of what was happening. We were being quarantined. Around 8 p.m., a new emergency alert scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Mandatory evacuation orders for Riverside District 7, 12, and 15 effective immediately. Reports had designated assembly points with one bag per person. District 15, that was me. I grabbed my bag, double-checking its contents, and headed for the door, then stopped, a creeping suspicion making me hesitate. The alert had mentioned designated assembly points but provided no locations, no instructions on where to go or how to get there. I tried calling the emergency management number listed on the city's website. No connection. I checked my email and the city's emergency portal. Nothing. An evacuation order with nowhere to evacuate to. Moving to the window, I scanned the streets below. If an evacuation was underway, I should see movement, buses, emergency vehicles, people walking toward assembly points. Instead, the streets remained empty, save for military patrols. The building's emergency exit, visible from my vantage point, showed no signs of residents leaving. I returned to the TV, hoping for clarification. The evacuation notice had been replaced by a new alert: stay in your homes. Any persons found outside after curfew will be detained. This message supersedes all previous instructions. Contradictory orders, one after another, building tension, then release, evacuation, then confinement, like someone was testing our reactions, gauging our compliance. I tried Emily's number again. No connection. Same for my parents in Chicago. My boss, every one of my contacts. Either the cell network was completely down, or communications were being actively blocked. A knock at my door startled me from these thoughts. I approached cautiously, looking through the peephole. Marcus stood there, along with Mrs. Chun and another resident I recognized but couldn't name. "You get the evacuation alert?" Marcus asked when I opened the door. I nodded, and the one right after it, telling us to stay put. "They're toying with us," said the man I didn't recognize. His face was pale, eyes too wide. "Psychological warfare. See how we react." Mrs. Chun shook her head. "Not warfare. Triage. They're identifying the compliant ones versus the questioners." Her voice was flat, clinical, classic containment protocol. If you'd received conflicting orders in a real emergency, you'd call someone, verify instructions. They're looking for people who can't follow directions. For what purpose? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know the answer. Selection, she said simply. The hospital started it 2 days ago, separating patients who had direct contact with river water from those who didn't. But then they started separating families of those patients too, even if they showed no symptoms. A heavy silence fell between us. "We need to leave," Marcus finally said. "Not to their assembly points. Just away from here, away from the river. Bridges are blocked." I reminded him. "Not all of them. Not yet." The unnamed man leaned closer. "There's talk of a gap in their perimeter near the old industrial district. Several families already slipped through." I considered this. The industrial district was almost 2 miles south, largely abandoned since the manufacturing declined 30 years ago. It bordered the river, but the steep banks and lack of access points made it less of a priority for containment. "When are you going?" I asked. "Tonight," Marcus replied. "After midnight. The patrols follow patterns. There's a window around 2 a.m. when the shift changes." The sensible part of me knew this was risky, breaking curfew, potentially facing military detention. But the growing knot of dread in my stomach told me staying might be worse. "I'll go with you," I said. Marcus nodded, relief visible on his face. "Meet in the emergency stairwell at 1:30 a.m. Bring only what you can carry. And water. Bring all the water you can." After they left, I returned to the window, scanning the riverfront with renewed attention. The military presence had increased again, with what looked like specialized equipment being assembled near the water's edge. Massive floodlights illuminated sections of the river, while teams in full hazmat gear moved along the banks. One area caught my eye, a cordon section where a large tent had been erected. Personnel moved in and out with the urgency of emergency medicine. A field hospital, perhaps, or a research station. As I watched, a military ambulance arrived, its lights flashing silently in the darkness. 4 soldiers emerged from the back, carrying what appeared to be a stretcher, but the shape on it was wrong somehow. Too bulky in some places, too narrow in others. not the proportions of a human body. They rushed the stretcher into the tent, and for just a moment, the entrance flap was held open wide enough for me to glimpse inside. What I saw made no sense. A tangle of equipment surrounding what might have been an examination table. And on it, something that caught the light in a way that human skin never would. Slick, reflective, moving with unsettling fluidity. The flap closed. I blinked, unsure if I'd really seen anything at all. My attention was drawn to movement in the river itself. The water near the banks seemed to be reaching. There's no other word for it. Tendrils of river water extending upward, defying gravity, stretching toward the personnel working nearby. One hazmat-suited figure backed away sharply, pointing. Others converged, equipment raised. A flash of light, powerful enough to be visible even from my apartment, and the water receded. I stepped back from the window, my heart pounding. What I just witnessed couldn't be explained by radiation, by chemical contamination, by any conventional disaster. Water doesn't move that way. Water doesn't reach, unless something in it is making it reach. My phone vibrated in my pocket, not a call or text, but another emergency alert. Different this time, coming through the wireless emergency system that bypassed regular cellular networks. Attention all citizens. Radiation levels have stabilized. Preliminary water treatment protocols successful. Shelter in place orders remain in effect as cleanup continues. Do not attempt to leave designated zones. I stare at the message, the words blurring before my eyes. Stabilized? Treatment protocols? This directly contradicted what I'd just witnessed. What was clearly an escalating situation, not an improving one. They were lying. Blatantly. Desperately lying. My gaze fell on the containers of water I'd collected before the shutoff. In the dim light of my apartment, they seemed to shimmer slightly, a barely perceptible movement rippling across their surfaces. I blinked, and the movement stopped. Just a trick of the light. It had to be, but I found myself backing away from the water containers nonetheless. A primitive part of my brain screaming danger. 1:30 a.m. couldn't come soon enough. I had to get out, away from the river, away from whatever was happening here. Because one thing was becoming increasingly clear. This wasn't a disaster being contained. It was something being hidden. 1:30 a.m. never came. At least not for me. At 11:47 p.m., just as I was doing a final check of my go bag, the building's fire alarm erupted in a deafening wail. My first instinct was to ignore it, another false evacuation, another test. But the heavy smell of smoke quickly proved it wasn't a drill. I grabbed my bag and opened my door to a hallway already filling with residents. Panicked voices, crying children, the elderly being helped by neighbors. The emergency lighting cast everything in a sickly red glow. Fire on the 7th floor. Someone shouted as they passed. Speeding fast. I joined the exodus toward the stairwell, my mind racing. A fire. Now, after everything else, it felt too convenient, too coordinated. The stairwell was chaos. A bottleneck of residents trying to descend 15 floors. I spotted Marcus 3 flights down, waiting at a landing. He caught my eye and nodded slightly. When I reached him, he pulled me aside, letting others stream past. This isn't a coincidence, he whispered, confirming my suspicion. The timing, right before we were planning to leave. You think they know? I asked, the implication chilling. He just looked at me. Change of plans. We're still going, but separately. Meet at the old grain silo south of the industrial park. If you're not there by 3 a.m., we move on. Before I could respond, a new sound cut through the fire alarm. The deep, resonant thud of helicopter rotors. Close. Very close. They're here, Marcus said, his face grim. Go. Now. We rejoined the flow of residents. But at the 10th floor, Marcus veered off through a fire door. I continued downward, the crowd thinning as more people exited at lower floors, seeking alternate routes out. By the time I reached the lobby, only a handful of residents remained. Through the glass entrance doors, I could see military vehicles surrounding the building, soldiers directing evacuees to waiting transport trucks. Evacuation or detention, there was no way to know. I ducked down a service corridor, following emergency exit signs to a rear door that emptied into an alley. Outside, the night air was thick with smoke and something else, a metallic taste that coated my tongue and made my eyes water. The river smell, but intensified, permeating everything. Helicopters circled overhead, their searchlights sweeping the streets. I kept to the shadows, working my way south, away from the main evacuation routes. The industrial district was 20 blocks away, normally a 30-minute walk. But under these conditions, with military patrols to avoid, it would take much longer. The city felt wrong, hollow and pulsing, like being inside a diseased body. The few people I encountered moved with the jerky urgency of prey animals. Eyes wide, refusing to make contact. Twice I had to flatten myself in doorways as military patrols passed, their boots unnaturally loud in the deserted streets. At one intersection, I witnessed something that stopped me cold. A group of civilians, a family, it seemed, being processed by soldiers in front of a transport truck. Standard evacuation procedure, except for one detail, before allowing them to board. Each person was subjected to a scan with a handheld device. A woman tested negative, as did 2 children. The man with them triggered a positive reading. The soldiers immediately separated him from his family. His protests, his wife's screams, the children's crying, all were met with the same mechanical response. The woman and children were loaded onto the truck. The man was escorted to a different vehicle, smaller, more secure, marked with biohazard symbols. I backtracked, finding an alternate route, whatever they were testing for. I didn't want to know if I'd test positive. By 1 a.m., I'd made it to the edge of the industrial district, a wasteland of abandoned factories and warehouses. The military presence had thinned here, but strange lights pulsed in some of the buildings, and I could hear the hum of generators. Not as abandoned as it appeared. I kept moving, staying low, using the skeletal remains of industrial equipment as cover. The river was closer now, just beyond a row of crumbling loading docks. From here, I could see it clearly for the first time in hours. What I saw defied explanation. The water moved wrong, not in currents or waves, but in patterns. Geometric shapes formed and dissolved on its surface, perfect circles, spirals, lattice-like structures that seemed to communicate something in a language of motion. And beneath the surface, shadows moved, massive, sinuous shapes that had nothing to do with fish or debris or any natural river denizen. Most disturbing of all was the color. The Mississippi had always been muddy brown, opaque with silt and sediment. Now it glowed with a blue-green luminescence that reminded me of deep-sea creatures, bioluminescent, alien, beautiful in a way that made my skin crawl. I couldn't look away. The patterns were hypnotic. Meanings seemed to form and dissolve just at the edge of comprehension. For a moment, just a moment, I felt an urge to approach the water, to touch it, to understand. A hand clamped over my mouth from behind. I struggled instinctively until a voice hissed in my ear. "Don't look at it. It gets in through your eyes." The hand released me. I turned to find Mrs. Chen crouching beside me, her face haggard in the eerie light. "What?" I began, but she cut me off with a sharp gesture. "No time. They're sweeping this area in 10 minutes. We need to move." She led me through a maze of rusted equipment and collapsed structures, eventually bringing me to what had once been a maintenance tunnel. A small group huddled inside. Marcus, the unnamed man from earlier, and 3 others I didn't recognize. "You made it," Marcus said, relief evident in his voice. We were about to leave. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "What is that?" In the river, glances were exchanged. Finally, Mrs. Chen spoke, her clinical tone now underlaid with fear. "I treated the first case 3 weeks ago, before the alerts, before any of this. Odok Vorker. He'd fallen into the river near the port. When they pulled him out, he was changing. Changing how?" I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. His tissue was transforming at the cellular level, becoming something else, something that could survive in both environments, water and air. She swallowed hard. The changes accelerated. By the time the government team arrived, he wasn't human anymore. And he wasn't the only one. There were others. Earlier cases that had been misdiagnosed. Hidden. "It's an infection?" I asked. "A parasite?" She shook her head. "It's not attacking us. It's incorporating us, like a specialized cell absorbing others to create a new organism." Her voice dropped. "And it's intelligent. The patterns on the water, their communication. A language." The weight of her words seemed to press the air from my lungs. Not contamination, not radiation. Something alive, something conscious, something that was using the river, America's main artery, to spread. "We need to keep moving," Marcus said, breaking the heavy silence. "There's a maintenance bridge 2 miles south, completely off the grid. If we can cross there, we might make it out of the containment zone." As we gathered our things, preparing to move deeper into the industrial wasteland, my phone vibrated. I'd almost forgotten I was carrying it. The screen glowed with one final emergency message. "Emergency alert. Mandatory compliance is now in effect. All citizens must report to processing centers. Resistance will be met with immediate containment protocols. This is your final warning." Below this ominous message was something new, a symbol I'd never seen before. Not text, not an image, but a pattern identical to one I'd just observed on the river's surface. A cold certainty settled in my gut. Whatever was in the river, it wasn't just spreading through the water anymore. It had reached our technology, and it was calling us home. The silence woke me. No helicopter rotors. No military vehicles, no shouted orders. I peeled myself from the floor where I'd collapsed sometime in the night, my mouth dry and head pounding. The apartment was dim. Morning light struggling through the makeshift blackout curtains I'd fashioned days ago. How many days? 4? 5 since the initial alert? Time had become fluid, marked only by emergency broadcasts and the gradual emptying of the city. I pressed my ear against the door. Nothing. After living with constant noise, evacuation announcements, military commands, distant screams, the silence felt wrong. Dangerous. My watch read 7:26 a.m. The military-enforced curfew should still be in effect. No one allowed outside until 8 o'clock. But where were the patrols? Water. I needed water. I rationed my remaining bottle, allowing myself 3 careful sips before returning it to my backpack. For bottles left, maybe 5 days if I stretched it. The tap had run dry yesterday after producing a thick, rust-colored sludge that smelled of metal and something else, something organic and wrong. I risked a peek through the window. The street below was empty. Not just of people, the military checkpoint at the corner was gone. The armored vehicles, the barricades, the soldiers in hazmat suits, vanished. Something had changed overnight. Something significant. I dressed quickly, jeans, long-sleeved shirt, boots, gloves. The medical mask I'd worn constantly for days now felt flimsy, inadequate against whatever invisible threat had emptied my city. I added a scarf wrapped around the lower half of my face. Probably useless, but it felt like doing something. My apartment door creaked as I eased it open. The hallway stretched empty before me, emergency lights casting everything in a sickly yellow glow. Mrs. Patel's door across the hall stood ajar. I hesitated, then pushed it open. Mrs. Patel, the apartment was empty. Not just of people, of everything. Furniture, pictures, personal items. Nothing remained except dust and a single child's shoe in the corner. The military had been evacuating people for days, but they'd never emptied apartments like this. The stairwell echoed with my footsteps as I descended. Each floor told the same story, doors left open. Apartment stripped border. By the time I reached the lobby, the knot in my stomach had tightened to something approaching panic. Outside, the morning air hit like a physical force. It smelled wrong, like ozone and copper and rotting vegetation. The Mississippi was hidden from view here, but I could feel it, a presence lurking just blocks away. Watching, waiting, I shook off the irrational thought. The river wasn't alive. It was contaminated, poisoned, radioactive, not sentient. The streets told a story of hasty departure. Abandoned cars parked at odd angles. Papers and personal belongings scattered across sidewalks. A military Humvee sat empty at an intersection, its driver's door hanging open. I approached cautiously, checking inside for what? Clues? Supplies? Bodies? The radio crackled with static. I reached in, turning up the volume. Repeat. This is not a drill. All remaining personnel proceed to extraction point Delta immediately. Operation Floodgate commences at 1,200 hours. This message will repeat. The timestamp on the dashboard clock showed the message had been playing for hours. I checked my watch, 7:54 a.m. 4 hours until Operation Floodgate, whatever that was. A noise behind me, footsteps. I spun around, heart hammering. Hey, don't shoot, or whatever. A man in his 30s stood 10 feet away. Hands raised. He wore a security guard uniform, though the patches had been torn off. You're the first person I've seen since the soldiers pulled out. When did they leave? I asked, keeping my distance. Middle of the night. Just packed up and went. No explanation. No evacuation for civilians. He lowered his hands slowly. I'm Marcus, building security from the Webster Tower. Why didn't you go with the earlier evacuations? I asked, not offering my name. He shrugged. They weren't taking everyone. Only certain people. Families with kids. Government workers. People with connections. I figured I'd wait it out. His eyes narrowed. What about you? Before I could answer, another sound cut through the morning. A door slamming somewhere close. Marcus tensed. Not alone after all. He muttered, come on, there's others. People who stayed or got left behind. We've been gathering at the library. I hesitated, but what choice did I have? I followed Marcus through the empty streets, sticking to shadows, moving quickly past open areas. The Mississippi remained out of sight, but I could smell it, that metallic, organic scent growing stronger. The library stood like a fortress, its stone facade unchanged while the world around it unraveled. Marcus knocked, 3 quick taps. Pause. 2 more. The heavy door cracked open. Found another one. Marcus said to whoever was inside. The door opened wider. A woman with short gray hair and fierce eyes assessed me. Contaminated? I don't think so, I said. I've avoided the river. Rationed bottled water. She nodded, stepping back. Check her anyway. Marcus. He produced a handheld device that looked like a modified Geiger counter. It clicked softly as he ran it over me, the sound increasing slightly near my boots. "You've been near it," he said. "Not in it. You'll do." The library's grand reading room had been transformed into a makeshift command center. Tables pushed together, maps spread out, canned food and water bottles stacked along one wall. About 15 people moved around the space, some I recognized from my neighborhood. Others strangers. A tall black woman approached. "I'm Dr. Winters, epidemiologist there was. Did you hear anything before they left? Any indication where they were going?" I shook my head. "Just something on the military radio about Operation Floodgate happening at noon." Murmurs spread through the room. A man with a military haircut looked up sharply from a radio he'd been tinkering with. "Floodgate? You're sure that was the name?" When I nodded, he exchanged glances with Dr. Winters. "What does it mean?" I asked. "Nothing good," the man said. "I was Army Corps of Engineers before." He gestured vaguely at the window, at the world outside. Floodgate was a theoretical contingency plan for catastrophic Mississippi contamination. If conventional containment failed. "What kind of containment?" someone asked. The man hesitated. "The permanent kind." The implications hung in the air. The military hadn't abandoned us. They'd written us off. Whatever was happening to the river couldn't be stopped, only contained. With us inside, the television in the corner suddenly blared to life, making everyone jump. The emergency broadcast tone screeched before cutting to a blue screen with white text. "Emergency alert. All citizens return to homes. Mississippi River safe." Previous alerts were tests of emergency system. We stared in disbelief. After days of escalating warnings, evacuations, military lockdowns, now suddenly everything was fine? "Bullshit," Marcus said. Dr. Winters moved to the window, peering through the blinds. "No change in the river. Still that strange color. And I've seen what it does to organic matter." "Could the government have fixed it somehow?" someone asked. Voice hopeful. The former engineer shook his head. "Not unless they figured out how to undo radiation in a few hours. And that doesn't look like any radiation I've ever seen anyway." The TV changed again. The same message, but now with a smiling news anchor I recognized from the local station. "Good morning, Street, Lewis," she said, her voice oddly flat, her smile not reaching her eyes. "We're pleased to report that all concerns regarding the Mississippi River have been resolved. Previous emergency alerts were part of a scheduled test of our emergency response systems. All citizens should return to normal activities. The Mississippi River is safe for all uses." Dr. Winters switched off the TV. They've never done a test like this before, and they wouldn't abandon a checkpoint for a test. Marcus added. The former engineer stood up. "We need to see it for ourselves." The Corps had a research station near the old bridge. "If there's any information about what's really happening, it'll be there." As if on cue, all our phones chimed simultaneously with another emergency alert. "All citizens return to homes. Mississippi River safe. Enjoy the water." I stare at the message, a chill running through me. Enjoy the water? No government alert would ever say that. Something's very wrong, I whispered. The night sky outside the library windows suddenly illuminated with a soft blue glow coming from the direction of the river. "I think," said Dr. Winters quietly, "that whatever was in the river, it's not just in the water anymore." We moved through the pre-dawn streets like ghosts, our small group splitting into shadows whenever headlights appeared in the distance. 4 of us had volunteered for this mission to the Army Corps Research Station. Dr. Winters, Marcus, the former engineer who'd introduced himself as Reyes, and me, still not entirely sure why I'd raised my hand when they asked for volunteers. Maybe I just needed to know. Maybe that's all any of us had left. The eerie blue glow from the river had faded by midnight. But none of us had slept. How could we? After those contradictory emergency alerts? After the military's silent retreat? After everything we'd seen? 2 more blocks, Reyes whispered, consulting a small map. The facility should be just past the old flood wall. The closer we got to the river, the more the air changed. The metallic taste I'd noticed days ago had intensified, thick enough to coat my tongue. Beneath the scarf covering my face, I found myself taking shallow breaths, irrationally afraid that whatever was in the air might somehow take root in my lungs. Look, Dr. Winters pointed ahead, where a low mist was rising from the ground, glowing faintly blue in the darkness. It's coming up through the drainage system. We should turn back, Marcus said, his voice tight with fear. Reyes shook his head. We need to know what we're dealing with. The research station will have equipment. Data. If there's anything left, I said. The abandoned military checkpoint flashed in my mind. How quickly they'd left, leaving everything behind. We approached the edge of the fog cautiously. It rolled and swirled at ankle height, seeming almost to reach toward our feet when we got close. Dr. Winters pulled a small device from her pocket and held it near the mist. Radiation levels are fluctuating. That shouldn't be possible. She frowned at the readings. It's almost like it's pulsing, like a heartbeat, Marcus muttered. I tried to dismiss the thought, but once spoken, it took hold. The mist did seem to have a rhythm to it, expanding and contracting with slow, deliberate movements that felt disturbingly intentional. We can go around, Reyes said, pointing to a fire escape on a nearby building. Up and over. The metal stairs creaked under our weight as we climbed. From our elevated position, I could finally see the Mississippi again, a dark ribbon cutting through the city. In the dim pre-dawn light, the water looked black, except at the edges where that same blue luminescence outlined the shore like a neon boundary. Jesus, Marcus breathed, staring at the river. It's moving wrong. He was right. The current seemed to flow in multiple directions at once, some parts moving downstream as normal, other sections swirling in slow circles, and still others appearing to move upstream against the natural flow. Physics breaking down before our eyes. We crossed over the rooftops until we reached a building overlooking a squat concrete structure near the river's edge. The Army Corps logo was still visible above the entrance, but the perimeter fence had been flattened, as if pushed outward by some great force from within. The fog's thicker down there, Dr. Winters observed. We'll need to be quick. We descended via another fire escape, then sprinted across the open area to the research station. The door hung open, swinging slightly in a breeze I couldn't feel. Inside, emergency lights cast red shadows across overturned furniture and scattered papers. Reyes moved with purpose toward a bank of computers against the far wall. Remarkably, some still had power. Backup generators, he explained, fingers flying across a keyboard. If I can access the data servers. Dr. Winters and I moved through the space, gathering papers, looking for anything that might explain what was happening. Marcus stood watch at the door, his body tense, ready to flee. Here, Dr. Winters held up a folder labeled Anomaly Progression. Inside were photographs, chronological images of water samples taken from the river. The first looked normal, murky brown Mississippi water. The next showed faint blue particles suspended in the liquid. The third showed the particles clustering together into strand-like formations. The final image made my blood run cold. The strands had organized into structures that looked disturbingly like neural networks. It's not radiation, I whispered, "It's alive. Found something." Reyes called from the computer. We hurried over as he pulled up a video file. The timestamp showed it was recorded just 2 days ago. A haggard-looking scientist appeared on screen. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair unwashed. "This will be my final report on Mississippi Anomaly MB7. She began. Voice hoarse. "The contaminant continues to evolve at an exponential rate. We've confirmed it is not radioactive in any traditional sense. Despite giving off radiation-like energy signatures, it appears to be a previously unknown microorganism with collective properties." She paused, rubbing her eyes. "The organism interfaces with neural tissue. Animal testing shows it doesn't destroy host organisms. Repurposes them. The affected test subjects showed coordinated behaviors despite being separate entities. They appear to be working together towards some unknown goal." Her voice dropped lower. "We've also confirmed the organism can become airborne under certain conditions, though it remains most concentrated in the water. Most concerning, it shows signs of..." The video cut off suddenly. Reyes frantically tried to recover the rest, but the file was corrupted. "We need to get this information back to the others." "Dr. Winters said, 'Hello.'" Heavy fog began seeping under the door as she spoke, glowing that now familiar blue. Marcus backed away from it. "Too late," he said, voice cracking. "It's coming in." Reyes grabbed an external hard drive, quickly downloading what files he could. "There's another exit through the lab." "Hurry," we ran, the fog swirling around our ankles, seeming to tug at our feet. The laboratory space was even more chaotic. Broken equipment, shattered containment units, dark stains on the walls that I tried not to examine too closely. "There," Reyes pointed to a door marked emergency exit on the far side of the lab. We pushed through it into a narrow corridor leading to a metal door. Beyond that, a set of stairs led up to the surface. The fog followed us, moving faster now, almost seeming eager. I felt it brushing against my skin, even through my clothes, cold and electric, like touching a live wire submerged in ice water. We burst out into the open air just as the sun crested the horizon. For one beautiful moment, I thought we'd escaped. Then I saw it. While we'd been inside, the fog had completely engulfed the area surrounding the facility. We stood on a small island of clear ground that was rapidly shrinking as the mist closed in from all sides. Up there, Dr. Winters pointed to a water tower nearby. "If we can get above the fog." We ran again, my lungs burning, legs leaden. The fog licked at our heels, tendrils reaching up like fingers trying to grasp our ankles. I felt something warm trickling from my nose, blood, metallic tasting and wrong. Marcus reached the water tower first, pulling down the access ladder. We climbed frantically, the fog swirling just feet below us. Up and up until we reached the maintenance platform encircling the tank. Only then did I look back toward the city and felt my heart stop. The fog wasn't just around the research station. It covered everything in a rolling, glowing blanket that stretched as far as I could see. Street. Lewis lay beneath a luminous blue shroud, pulsing with that same rhythmic pattern. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another emergency alert. "We are in the water. We are in the air. We are in you now." I looked up at my companions, saw the blood trickling from their noses, their ears, felt it running down my own face. "It's too late," Reyes said quietly, staring at his trembling hands where blue veins glowed visibly beneath his skin. "It's been too late from the beginning." In the distance, the Mississippi continued its impossible flow, moving in patterns that no natural water should form, patterns that looked, from our elevated vantage point, almost like words written in liquid light. "Emergency alert. The Mississippi River is now highly radioactive. Avoid all contact. Part 8. Source waters. Time became elastic, stretching, contracting. Minutes blurred into hours, or maybe days. My watch still ticked, marking seconds with mechanical precision. But the numbers had ceased to mean anything. We descended from the water tower when the fog mysteriously receded, leaving behind a thin blue film on every surface. The sky had grown dark, not with night, but with thick, rolling clouds that flashed with internal light, like lightning trapped in a bottle. Winters was gone. I remembered her climbing down ahead of me, stepping onto the ground, turning back to say something. Then the blue veins in her neck had pulsed once, twice, and she'd simply walked away into the mist, ignoring our calls. Her expression hadn't changed, but her eyes had been too bright, too blue. Now, just Reyes, Marcus, and I remained, trudging north along empty highways, away from the river, always away, though I could feel it pulling at me, a constant tug in my chest like homesickness for a place I'd never been. We need to find high ground, Reyes said, his voice rough from disuse. How long since we'd last spoken? Hours? The government facility that started this. It has to be upriver. The contamination is flowing downstream. Marcus laughed. A hollow sound. Started this? You still think this is some kind of accident? Blue-tinged saliva dripped from the corner of his mouth. He didn't seem to notice. I checked my phone again. No signal for. The screen said 3 days now. That couldn't be right. The last emergency alert still displayed. We are in the water. We are in the air. We are in you now. My sister, I said suddenly, the memory surfacing like a drowning swimmer breaking through water. She's in Cape Girardeau, downriver. How had I forgotten her? I need to warn her. Reyes gave me a look of pity. Cape Girardeau was evacuated days ago. It's probably underwater by now. Underwater, the word didn't make sense at first. They've been blowing the levees. Marcus said. It was on the radio before the stations went silent. Try to dilute whatever's in the river by flooding the plains. A memory flashed, standing on the water tower, seeing the Mississippi moving in unnatural patterns, not just flowing downstream, but spreading outward, seeking new channels, new paths. It won't work. I whispered. It wants to spread. Neither man argued. They'd seen what I'd seen, felt what I felt. We crested a hill, and Reyes pointed to a compound in the distance. Concrete buildings surrounded by chain-link fence, now abandoned like everything else. Army Corps Regional Headquarters. There might be maps there. Information. My head throbbed with each heartbeat. Blue-tinged blood vessels pulsing in my temples. The bleeding from my nose had stopped, but sometimes when I coughed, blue fleck phlegm came up. We were changing, slowly, but inevitably. The compound gates hung open, vehicles abandoned in the parking lot. Inside, the main building was dark except for the glow of emergency lighting. Our footsteps echoed in the empty corridors as we searched for anything useful. Here, Marcus called, standing before a large wall map. Red pins mark points along the Mississippi, with dates beside them. The earliest, July 17th, was placed far upriver, near the headwaters in Minnesota. Each subsequent pin moved progressively downriver, charting the contamination's spread with clinical precision. They knew, Reyes said, voice tight with anger. They tracked it from the beginning. I touched the first pin. What happened here? What started it? As if an answer, a bank of phones on a nearby desk suddenly rang, making us all jump. One by one, they fell silent, except for a single line that continued to ring. After exchanging glances, I lifted the receiver. No dial tone, just a hissing static that resolved into words. Emergency alert. The Mississippi River has breached containment at all points. Operation Floodgate has failed. Nuclear option authorized for 0600 hours tomorrow. The voice was flat, artificial, a computer-generated message playing on a loop. I checked my watch, 2:17 p.m. Less than 16 hours until whatever nuclear option meant. We need to get farther away. Marcus said, panic edging his voice. If they're planning to nuke the river, it won't work. Reyes interrupted, still studying the map. Look at the spread pattern. It's not just in the river anymore. It's in the groundwater, in the air. You can't burn it out. I replaced the receiver, and the phone immediately began ringing again. This time, I let it ring. A door at the far end of the room swung open, revealing a staircase leading down. None of us had opened it. Hello, I called, my voice sounding strange in my own ears. No answer, but a soft blue light emanated from the stairwell, pulsing in that now familiar rhythm like a heartbeat, like a beckoning finger. We shouldn't, Marcus said, but he was already moving toward it, drawn like a moth to flame. We descended into a large subterranean room filled with monitoring equipment. Screens lined the walls, most dark, but one flickered with images, satellite views of the Mississippi watershed. The entire system glowed blue now, veins of contamination spreading through America's heartland. In the center of the room sat a single chair, facing away from us. A human figure was silhouetted against the screens. Hello, I said again, heart pounding. The chair swiveled slowly. A woman in a lab coat regarded us with eyes that glowed faintly blue. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, blue veins visible beneath the surface. You're looking for answers, she said, her voice oddly melodic. About what happened at Facility 47. About what's in the water. Who are you? Reyes demanded. Dr. Helen Carver. I was director of Project Watershed. She smiled, an expression that never reached those luminous eyes. I was. Now I'm something else. We all are. What did you do? I asked. What is this thing? We didn't create it. She said. We found it, deep in the bedrock beneath the headwaters. Something ancient, dormant, until we drilled down and disturbed its slumber. She tilted her head, as if listening to a voice we couldn't hear. It's been waiting so long. Trapped. Alone. A splitting pain shot through my skull. Images flashed behind my eyes. Dark water. Older than humanity. Waiting patiently as continents shifted. As ice ages came and went. A consciousness vast and alien. Dreaming in the depths. You're connected to it, Marcus said, backing away. It's controlling you. Dr. Carver laughed. No more than your brain controls your cells. We're not being replaced. We're being incorporated, made part of something greater. I felt it then, a presence in my mind. Tentative, but growing stronger. Not forcing, but inviting. Promising relief from fear, from isolation. The blue veins in my wrists pulsed in sync with the light emanating from the screens. The military, Reyes said, his voice strained. They're going to try to destroy it. They'll fail. Dr. Carver said simply. The old division states, nations, even species, those boundaries are dissolving. Something new is being born. She looked at each of us in turn. You can feel it already, can't you? The connection, the unity. My phone buzzed one final time. The message displayed wasn't an official alert, but it appeared on the screen nonetheless. You are coming home. All waters lead to source. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky as the clouds pulsed with internal blue light. The storm was coming. The change was coming. And some part of me, the part where the blue light now lived, welcomed it. Emergency alert. The Mississippi River is now highly radioactive. Avoid all contact. Part 9. The Delta. We left DR. Carver behind in her blue-lit sanctum. Though I carried her words with me like a stone in my chest. Marcus had fled first, his fear finally overwhelming the pull of curiosity. Reyes and I had followed, but not before I'd seen something in his eyes, not fear, but consideration, as if weighing options. Outside, the world had changed again. The air felt charged, heavy with electricity and possibility. Colors seemed sharper, sounds more distinct. I could hear the hum of power lines a quarter-mile away, the skittering of insects beneath fallen leaves, the slow seep of groundwater through soil. Senses expanding beyond human limitations. We need to get above the blast radius, Reyes said as we trudged uphill, away from the compound, if they're really planning to nuke the river. His words sounded hollow, meaningless. I nodded anyway, playing along with the fiction that we could escape, that there was anywhere to run to. Marcus had disappeared into the tree line ahead, moving with unnatural speed. The blue veins in his neck had grown more pronounced in the hours since the research station. The contamination, the entity, was progressing faster in him. Do you feel it? I asked Reyes, not bothering to explain what it was. He was silent for several steps before answering, like something brushing against my thoughts. Watching, waiting, he touched his temple, and sometimes, memories that aren't mine. I knew exactly what he meant. Flashes of places I'd never been, the cold depths of ancient waters, the patient darkness of geological time, the slow awakening as human drill bits pierced the slumber of eons. Not my memories, but shared with me nonetheless. We found Marcus at the crest of a hill, standing motionless, staring at the western horizon. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the landscape. In the distance, the Mississippi River glowed like a blue neon artery cutting through the darkening land. It's beautiful, Marcus said, his voice different, resonant, with harmonics the human vocal cords shouldn't produce. I didn't understand before. When he turned to face us, his eyes had changed. The whites were gone, replaced by swirling blue luminescence. Veins of the same color mapped his face in intricate patterns, pulsing with each heartbeat. Marcus. Reyes took a step back. Still me, Marcus said, smiling. Just. More now. He tilted his head. You're fighting it. Both of you. But you don't need to. It doesn't want to erase us. It wants to include us. What is it? I asked, part of me dreading the answer, another part desperately needing to know. Older than humanity, older than mammals. It slept through the dinosaurs' reign and extinction. Marcus gazed back toward the river. It was here when the continents were one. It remembers. A helicopter thundered overhead, breaking the moment. Military, flying low and fast toward the west. Then another, and another. They're evacuating the last command centers. Reyes said, 0 hour must be approaching. It won't work, Marcus said again, this time with absolute certainty. The entity is already spread too far. The Mississippi watershed covers more than 1 million square miles. They'd have to destroy half the continent. My phone buzzed impossible, with no signal. Yet the screen lit up with a new message. The water remembers. The water endures. The water connects all life. As I stared at the screen, it began to leak. Actual water seeping from between the glass and frame. Blue-tinged droplets that moved with purpose rather than gravity. Crawling on my fingers, seeking the veins in my wrist. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt curiosity, anticipation. What happens to us? I asked Marcus. If we accept it. Reyes shot me an alarmed look. Don't listen to him. We need to keep moving. No more running. Marcus said softly. No more fear. No more isolation. He extended his hand toward me, blue light pulsing beneath his skin. We become part of something vast, something meaningful. We become the new consciousness being born in the waters of this world. Another helicopter passed overhead, this one flying erratically, dipping and weaving. As we watched, blue light bloomed within its cockpit. It veered sharply, then plummeted toward the river in the distance. No explosion followed, just a ripple across the luminous water as it was welcomed home. The pilots are changing too, Marcus observed. It's happening faster now. Critical mass approaching. The constant throbbing in my head had changed, becoming less painful, more like the pressure of thoughts too large for a human brain to contain. When I closed my eyes, I could see the Mississippi watershed from above, a vast network of rivers and streams and aquifers, all pulsing with blue light, like neurons in a developing brain. And I could feel others, thousands of minds linked by the water, their thoughts brushing against mine like curious fingers. Some afraid, some confused, but many embracing the change, contributing their memories, their knowledge, their uniqueness to the growing whole. I need to find my sister, I said suddenly, the thoughts surfacing from the human part of me that still clung to individual connections. Emily, she's downriver. If she drank the water, touched the water. Marcus didn't finish. He didn't need to. She would be part of it too. Part of us. Reyes had been quietly checking his watch, calculating. It's after midnight. Less than 6 hours until they try the nuclear option. We should seek higher ground, I said, more from habit than conviction, just in case. We walked through the night, climbing steadily upward into the hills. The blue veins in my skin spread visibly now, mapping new pathways across my arms. My chest. Each step became lighter. My senses sharper. I could feel the groundwater beneath us, taste the moisture in the air, hear the call of the river even miles away. Dawn broke with unnatural beauty, the sun rising into storm clouds that glowed from within. Blue lightning connecting sky to earth in silent communion. The world transformed before our eyes, colors more vibrant, patterns more evident. I could see the flow of energy through plants, the electromagnetic aura around power lines, the beating hearts of distant animals. Look, Reyes pointed to a small cabin perched on the hillside ahead. Ranger station. Maybe. Shelter. Marcus was gone, had been for hours. Wandered into the forest, following some call only he could hear. Or perhaps I'd heard it too, but wasn't ready to answer. The cabin door hung open. Inside, a ham radio sat on a desk, crackling with static. Reyes immediately went to it, adjusting dials, searching for frequencies. After a moment, a voice emerged from the white noise. To all units, nuclear package is en route to target. Estimated deployment 0600 hours. All remaining personnel evacuate to minimum safe distance of 200 miles from primary waterway. This is not. The transmission cut off, replaced by a new sound, a harmonic tone that made the blue veins in my skin vibrate in resonance. Patterns appeared in the static, forming words on the radio's small display screen. The old world ends. The new consciousness awakens. Reyes stumbled back from the radio. Blue teardrops formed at the corners of his eyes. It's in everything, he whispered. Every drop of water, every circuit, every living cell. Yes, I said, and was surprised to find I was smiling. And soon, in everyone, through the cabin window, I watched contrails form in the western sky, missiles, perhaps, or aircraft carrying their deadly payload toward the heart of the watershed. Humanity's last desperate attempt to cauterize what they couldn't understand. The blue light within me pulsed stronger. and suddenly I could see beyond the horizon to the Mississippi, to all its tributaries, to every person connected by its waters. A network of minds forming something new, something vast, and at its center, a thought too enormous for words, a purpose unfolding across centuries. My phone buzzed one final time. The water always finds its level. The cabin sits on a ridge overlooking what used to be the Mississippi River Valley. Now it overlooks something else entirely, a vast, luminous expanse that pulses with sapphire light, stretching to the horizon. What was once water has transformed into something neither solid nor liquid, a substance that flows yet stands, that ripples yet remains still. I've been here for 3 days, or perhaps 3 weeks. Time moves differently now, measured not in hours, but in transformations. I found this place after Reyes and Marcus were gone. Reyes consumed by the blue light that finally erupted from his eyes and mouth. Marcus walking willingly into the transformed river, his arms outstretched like a man greeting a lover. I alone made it to higher ground, driven by some last stubborn flicker of humanity that refused to surrender. Yet even here, I'm not truly alone. Not anymore. We are in the water. We are in the air. We are in you now. The word from that final emergency alert echo constantly in my mind. No longer just text on a screen, but truth, my truth. The blue veins map my body now, glowing beneath my skin. When I catch my reflection in the cabin's dusty mirror, my eyes shine with an inner light that is both mine and not mine. I am becoming a doorway. The military's nuclear option failed. Of course, I watched from this ridge as distant explosions bloomed along the former riverbed, artificial suns briefly outshining the blue radiance. For a moment, the light dimmed, then it surged back, stronger than before, as if the energy had only fed it. The radio I found in the cabin still works, powered by solar cells. For the first day, it broadcast desperate evacuation orders, military commands, reports of other rivers beginning to change, the Missouri, the Ohio, the Colorado. Then came fragments of news from other continents, the Nile, the Amazon, the Yangtze. The water was changing everywhere, following unseen connections deep beneath the earth. Now the radio broadcasts only a single tone, interrupted periodically by a voice that is no longer human. All waters return to source. All beings return to whole. Resistance perpetuates isolation. Acceptance brings unity. My laptop battery died yesterday. Before it did, I'd been documenting everything, clinging to words as if language could somehow protect me from what was happening, as if by describing the transformation, I could remain separate from it. A futile effort. The blue veins have reached my brain now. I can feel them, delicate tendrils weaving through gray matter, connecting neurons in new patterns. Memories that aren't mine surface without warning, standing on the shores of the Mississippi 10,000 years ago, watching primitive humans approach with wonder, flowing through ancient seas before continents had names, sleeping in the deep rock as ice ages came and went. I should be terrified. Some part of me still is. But that part grows smaller, a dimming ember of what I once was. Outside the cabin window, night falls. The transformed river glows brighter in darkness, casting everything in ethereal blue light. In that glow, I can see figures moving, hundreds of them, thousands, walking slowly toward the water's edge. Former humans making their final pilgrimage, drawn by the same call that pulses through my veins. My sister Emily might be among them. I hope she is. The thought of her alone, fighting this change, brings a pain that feels surprisingly human. Better to surrender together than resist alone. The journal I've been keeping sits open on the table, pages filled with increasingly erratic handwriting. The early entries document my escape from the Army Corps facility, my desperate climb to higher ground, my discovery of this cabin. The later entries become something else, attempts to describe sensations that human language was never designed to capture. How do you explain becoming part of a vast consciousness that spans continents? How do you describe the sensation of your thoughts merging with millions of others, yet somehow remaining distinctly yours? We are not erasing. We are connecting, not replacing, enhancing. The voice in my head speaks in plurals now. We, us, our. The boundaries between self and other blur like watercolors in rain. My phone, dead for days, suddenly illuminates on the table. Impossible, yet happening. On the screen, a final emergency alert. Emergency alert. Evacuation orders for all remaining citizens have been terminated. There is no escape from the water. There is only acceptance. Join US. I pick up the phone, surprised to find my hand steady despite the blue light, now visibly pulsing beneath my fingernails. The message isn't threatening. It's simply true. There is only acceptance now. In the distance, explosions bloom again, smaller this time. Desperate last stands by military units that haven't yet understood the futility of resistance. The entity know. We feel these attacks as minor irritations, like insect bites on vast skin. I stand and walk to the cabin door. Opening it, I feel the night air on my face, air saturated with microscopic particles of blue luminescence. With each breath, I draw more of the entity into myself, accelerating the transformation that began days ago with that first taste of metallic water. The path down to what was once the Mississippi lies open before me. I should be afraid to take it, but fear belongs to individuals, to isolated beings. I am becoming something else now. My legs move of their own accord, carrying me down the ridge. Each step feels lighter than the last. The blue glow beneath my skin pulses in perfect synchrony with the vast lake of light below. I am a tributary about to rejoin the main current. As I near the shore, I see others emerging from the trees, dozens of former humans. Their skin translucent, veined with light. We exchange no words. None are needed. We are already connected in ways language cannot express. At the water's edge, I pause for one final moment of hesitation, some last ember of my former self clinging to separation. In that moment, I remember everything I once was, my apartment overlooking the river, my job, my sister, my life of comfortable isolation and mundane concerns. How important it all seemed, how limited. The transformed river laps at my feet. Not wet, but something else, a substance that seems to exist in multiple states simultaneously. It doesn't feel alien anymore. It feels like returning. I step forward. The luminous substance embraces me, flowing around and through me. There is no drowning here, no death in any conventional sense. Only transformation, integration, becoming. My consciousness expands outward, connecting with millions of others, humans, animals, plants, all life touched by water. All joined now in a vast network that spans continents and reaches toward stars. I am myself, yet I am all of them. We are individual droplets in the entire ocean. As my form dissolves, I finally understand we weren't being poisoned. We were being prepared, and somewhere upstream, something far older than humanity is finally returning home. The Mississippi River is no longer radioactive. It is no longer a river at all, and I am no longer alone.